right, we're ready to go. So what I'm going to do, of course, if we're ready to go, is say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Refresh. As you all know, this is a time to connect, be inspired, to learn something new, and ultimately feel just a bit better about ourselves. Hallelujah for that. And this time we get to spend together. How is everybody? It's so funny I say that and I can feel you like, okay, all right. But let me just say this. The world is a swirl. And that is not even a headline anymore. It is the world that we live in. It's hyperconnectivity. It's pinging and ponging us, delivering us to places around the globe, delivering both images of beauty and warmth and horror to our screens. Our screens like served as a double-edged sword, right? They're both filling and searing our souls. Talk about a need for resilience. There's this famous Japanese proverb. And we actually quote it in Wisdom. I left a copy of the book back there, The Girl's Guide to the Positive and the Possible. And it says, fall down 7 times and get up 8. So we got to approach every day with the mindset of optimism. And I know that sounds like a challenge, and it can be. There are those, no matter where they live in the world, facing incredible danger and hardship. And you know what? Wherever those conditions prevail, if you can get in your head, having many friends who have faced situations beyond our imagination, you begin ahead of the game. And that's why we're so excited about our guest today, Judge Rhonda People Waters. Judge Rhonda, and by the way, we call her Your Honor when she's in court. I love that. And she is honorific. She wrote history in 2020 because of her remarkable resilience. She will share her story, so I don't want to give any of the tidbits because they're just so good. But it's so remarkable as she shows us this, that no needs not to be the answer. No needs not to be the path. No can be adamantly no way. Because for her, it was this way. Because now we meet her as an accomplished judge, and she's going to tell us more about that, and a groundbreaker as the very first elected Black female court judge in DUVAL County, Florida. And while it's been in her heart and passion for most of her life, it wasn't in the people around her. And I think that's what makes her so remarkable, in addition to her talent and her effervescent spirit. So welcome, Your Honor, today to Refresh. We are so excited that you're with us. You were amazing for our girls last year for Generation WOW, which, by the way, is coming up November 7th. But you know what? It's always best to start a little bit about where you started. So hello, and where have you been?
Yes. Well, first of all, I am so honored to be here in Generation. Now you all are so special to me, and because of my daughter's connection and her involvement when she was in high school, and then the so many other young ladies that I've connected to just through passing. I know that you all are changing lives, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. As are you, but thank you so much. It's great to do it together.
Yes, we are doing this together. Good work. But I'll tell you that initially, let me just give you a little background of who I am and where I started from. I was born and raised, well, traditionally, I'll start off with high school and where I grew up in Selma, Alabama. My father was in the military, so I was kind of all over for a short period of time, but grew up mainly through school and high school in Selma, Alabama. And you all know that that is a town which is rich in our civil rights movement. And my grandfather was a janitor at the high school, Selma High School, that I attended. My grandmother went to school with Coretta Scott King, and just it was so rich to understand the many sacrifices that so many around us made to obviously make our community and our world a better place. So that was something that was taught to me early on, and I learned it day by day. And from there, got a scholarship. My parents were educators, so got a scholarship to go to an HBCU, historically Black university, Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And it was because of the scholarships. I wasn't, the smartest, but I would work hard, and I received an academic scholarship. And that was the same trend even to help me to get into law school. And I didn't necessarily know for sure that what I was going to do, but then I got the opportunity to take the LSAT and get into law school and get a scholarship to go to University of Florida. And
wow, I didn't realize you went to University of Florida Law School.
I did.
Talk about the company you keep. Like that's like, right. You probably elevated a lot of the students there just by being their classmate.
Well, it was a wonderful experience, and we've got to talk about that even now with where they are right now. I'm sure you've heard of, some of the pictures of minorities not getting in at schools like that. And so it was a wonderful opportunity that I'm forever grateful for. That led me to the public defender's office here in Jacksonville. And then from the public defender's office, I was able to work for a short time with a small private firm, and then opened up my own law firm, which I ran for several years during the course of trying to run or be appointed for the judgeship. And so that's kind of where I've gotten to this point from.
Wow. There's a lot of, I hear so many lessons that you obviously took away from every step of your experience. But I want to go back to them, but before we do, what was your path specifically to judgeship?
Well, it specifically, it started when I was in the public defender's office, and I got to see so many wonderful judges in this community, but very few minorities. And so my specific path was I began to apply after I gained that interest. And I first applied in 2009. And you can either be appointed or elected as a judge. Those are the only two paths to become a judge in Florida. So I applied beginning in 2009. I applied 16 times. And that process is important because I need you all to understand that it isn't just filling out an application. It's a very extensive application. You go through the interview process, which is the local judicial nominating committee here. You go through that process. And if you are selected to move on from there, then your name is nominated to the governor. And that process occurred for me 16 times, where I made it pretty much to this final process and was told no from the governor's office. I also ran twice, and the first time was in 2011-12. That was when Barack Obama was on the ballot. And I was unsuccessful with that election during that time period. And then obviously I ran again in 2020. And that was the successful opportunity that I had. But that was the 18th attempt to become judge. And so I tell people over and over again that I got 17 no's before I got to that 18th yes. And that's my story, my testimony of never giving up and making sure that you're committed to understanding your purpose.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I didn't want to say that in your introduction because it's just too powerful to hear from you. Being in public office, I mean, when you make an application, it's very public, right?
Absolutely.
And then you're in this public group and they say no once and you say, well, okay, I'm new at it. They say no twice. Well, they're going to know who I am. When you're getting into the 7th and 8th time, what's your mindset, and how do you keep back the demons that concede self-doubt, which actually sit in all of our beings?
Absolutely. Well, I will admit that it was humiliating. It was an embarrassing process. And that's why this story is so important for our young people to understand that you will, like you said, you're going to fall down. And we've got to figure out a way, how do you keep your head up? But I was embarrassed because after each interview, I was still expected to come and practice before the same legal community in the courthouse and hold my head up. And what I would try to do is to make sure that I reminded myself of who I was. My faith is very important. I had a wonderful community of people that believed in me. I would also continue to say, what can I do to enhance my resume? I would go and take other cases, maybe sit in on different trials that I had not previously had that experience before, and enhance my resume and make sure that I had done everything that I could possibly do that was within my control to say, this is who I am. This is why I know I'm qualified, even though I was told no before, or this is what I've done to make myself a better candidate.
Right. And how many of us have been told no, put our tail between our legs and then our head down and never emerged again? I want to remind everybody who's with us, I want to say hello to our Facebook friends as well. If you have any questions, well, I just got to make sure I have my Facebook questions here. Please Post them. We'll get to them. It's a great way for you to personally get to meet and hear from our esteemed guests. We go home, our heads down, but we don't really emerge again, right?
Right. And I'll tell you that I had a vision board and it's still up in my room.
We love vision. Oh, you're coming to our vision board party now. Go ahead. Yes.
Yes, I had a vision board and it was another judge, Judge Cox, who was amazing, Judge Angela.
Yes. Yes.
We did a vision board and I would talk to, friends that were either in those positions or where I was trying to head, or they would encourage me. And I had a picture of my own head over a robe. And that's what I would look at year after year. And so it's important for people to understand. I applied in 2009. I was not elected until 2020. So for 11 years, I had to create that vision for myself, regardless of whether others were able to see that. And so that's why I'll say those vision boards, listening to inspirational messages. Oh my gosh, I would listen over and over again to different worship songs and messages that would remind me of who I was in spite of what I was being told. And that is so important for our young people to know.
What about the young people that are still in us, Your Honor? I don't know if we ever truly outgrow those doubts, but hearing your story can help us, right, deal with them. I mean, it's just so amazing. Let me just ask you this. I heard you say this twice. In the beginning, you talked about growing up in Selma, Alabama, and you talked about it being in a community, right, that was all about civil rights and how that impacted you. It makes me think about how we choose the community we keep, which is why we're so adamant and excited about the Generation W community and the values, right? About education and connection and inspiration, right? And then you talked about you had a community around you, even after you left Selma, that believed in you.
Absolutely.
During that process, though, there was a community that wasn't ready to say yes to you. What did you learn about that community?
Wow. Well, you don't start off soft and gentle, do you, Donna?
Well, no, we only have 15 minutes. No, we have 24 minutes left to go. So hello. Well, no, because I think it's interesting that we have the world's not always for us in the way we want, right? We want to be in communities that are mixed with different ideas. And so we've got to learn how to deal with that. And we got to teach that to our kids as well, right?
My gosh, yes. And I remember I used to listen to this song over and over again, by DJ Khaled, that talked about all we do is win, win, win. You hear that song over and over again. All we do is win, 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 no matter what. But we don't always win, 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 no matter what. And there are people, forces, spirits, organizations, systems that are against us winning. And that was a hard lesson that I had to learn, and certainly is part of this message here. But what I had to learn was, in many of those instances, it wasn't personal, that it was a system that I was fighting against. And it took a lot of courage, and not just for me, but those around me, to make sure that we educated people that this wasn't personal, that this is a system that we have got to break down and we have got to fight through so that it will have the opportunity for those of us that are minorities, women, no matter what your race is, that we've got to create an opportunity that is equal for all. And to fight against that system was no easy feat, but I learned very well. And some of it was so shocking and disheartening to understand what those systems really entailed and how are we going to dismantle them. But we came with a great plan. We didn't just, come out here and willy-nilly figure out how this was going to happen. We had a team, we came up with a plan, and we followed that plan, and that was how it was done.
Yeah, and you did a great job, right? What was that moment like when you found out that you won? It's funny, I found out my whole family, and our family didn't coordinate, but our whole family voted for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
It's amazing. And I want to say that we got so many different cross sections of the community that supported our campaign. And I believe it was one of the first to do that for a judicial campaign, because it was important for our community to understand and see that judges can be involved in the community, that we're not just isolated, and what your community involvement in is, even before you are elected, will be representative of how you rule, how you make decisions. And I wanted to be able to share that, not run from that. The fact that I had previously worked as defense counsel, and typically, especially in our community, if you are a prior defense counsel, that you are shunned from being a judge. But I wanted people to know, and I was proud of it, and I gained that courage to help utilize that during our campaign, that just because I worked for the defense did not mean that I did not understand the law, that I would not and truly follow what the law says. So I think that was important.
So you mean, in other words, you think there's a bias in the legal community that you have to be a prosecutor, have prosecuting experience to be a judge?
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that I never knew that. I mean, it's funny. I have a son who came out of the public defender's office, and one day he said, maybe I'll be a judge. I didn't realize that he's starting behind the 8 ball with that.
Well, it's very inherent in this legal community and process. And if you actually looked at the numbers, there is a great significant lean towards those that have previously prosecuted. But that's why this message was about having judges that have a diversity of background and practice as well, and making sure that we establish that we too could follow the law and be fair and not be ashamed of the fact that we held different positions in our community.
Well, it does add a depth of understanding to the judicial process. Tell me, what was some of the first, when you all right, you get up there, you put on your robe and you hit your gavel, or somebody does. What are some of the lessons that you've learned from people who come to you, right, to adjudicate their situations?
Well, one of the first things that I'll tell you is I learned to be comfortable in extending grace to people. And that was important to me, because when I took the role, I expected everyone else to expect me to be extremely firm and harsh, because that was a large part of what I've seen. But I've become comfortable with extending grace. Now, I do think that it has to be balanced with monitoring my calendar and also having some, punishment associated with what my sentence will be, to hopefully discourage those type of actions. But to extend grace is so important, and I'm learning to be comfortable with that. But I also learned that people need to relate to you. They need to understand that you're hearing them, that you can understand what they are going through. Right now, we're dealing with so many evictions in our community. People that have worked hard most of their lives, and they're facing these huge amount of rent payments that are due. And I believe that, of course, I have to follow the law, but giving people the opportunity to have their voices heard is something that is unique in this role that we have as county court judges. And I truly appreciate that opportunity. And I hope that it encourages many of the residents that we have to come through our court system to be heard.
Right. In other words, you have to uphold the law.
Absolutely.
But it's so doing what you want people to feel like they have had their say, right? Their say, right? Their day in court, if you will, and understand that there is an opportunity for them to, in some way, mediate their own situation, I guess.
Absolutely. And let me give you an example. We had this young lady that was in court yesterday, and she needed to finish a driving course before she could have her charges dropped. And in order to do this, she had to go to a specific onelight.org. It's a website. She needed a computer to be able to do the course and print the, certificate saying she's completed. She's like, I don't have the money. She told me she was going to go to a location to rent the computer, which was going to be about $300, just so that she could get this done within a day or two's time. She went to the public library, and they had some blockage on the site, the website that she needed to go to, so she couldn't do it at the public library. Just taking the time to listen to her, we came up with the idea of, why don't we call the library downstairs? We have a library in our courthouse. I called down there, called in the middle of court, and said, listen, this young lady doesn't have a computer. Do we have computers? They said, yes, give us the website. We'll make sure that it is unblocked from this computer so that she can get this done. But those type of sensitivities don't come from us not taking the time to just listen and hear what the needs are.
And so she was able to go get her test.
Yes, and I expect her to come back, but she was able to go and get that test done, and I expect to see her tomorrow with proof of that.
Oh, well, but that, we would hope it would always be that way, right? There must be, do you begin to see patterns of situations that allow you to reflect on, I know you don't make law, but that you can then help give feedback to lawmakers or policymakers that can help situations? Does that happen?
Absolutely. I mean, your perspective is so important on how you handle things and how you can share this story or, different stories with others. And even though I am not the policymaker, you and others will be able to go and say, this is what we need for our community to make sure that we can enhance it. I mean, we just take it for granted that we're going to be able to access our computer and go and get these things done. But understanding that others might not have that same opportunity truly is about the perspective that we'll get from hearing the needs of the community.
Yeah, without a doubt. Let me just welcome everybody to Refresh. We're here with I guess I want to say the honorific, but that's not how you say, Judge Rhonda Peoples Waters. People said no to her 16 times. On the 17th, she was elected. She became the first African-American woman to be elected as a judge in Duval County. She's doing an amazing job. If anybody has any questions that you'd like to extend to her, please do let us know. I continue to want to go back to this community idea, because I think this thought of community really does shape who we are. It shaped who you are. Very obviously, it set you on this path of being able to be involved in your community, wanting to be a judge, getting involved in the law, right? And now building a community in Duval County. I guess that would be fair. Yes. What would you say to us in terms of how do we find our community? Or how do we influence our community if it's not exactly where we think it should be?
Well, getting involved is certainly important. And that was so critical to our victory and our win, is because I was not new to most in the community. I have been around. So I was very involved in the NAACP, which is actually hosting their Freedom Fund dinner right now. Very involved in Jacksonville area legal aid and the work that the great work that they do in the community. I was involved with the city on the ethics commission. There were so many roles, and there are many roles for each of us. And you have to find out what your specific passion is. I know that the city has made several calls for people to get involved in the commissions and the boards that we have, but maybe it will be your volunteering at the school. I was a PTA president as well. There are just so many different opportunities that you almost have to say, listen, I am going to work my way up, even if you don't think you have the qualifications or whatever those necessary requirements are. Work your way up, start small, and build to being useful in your community.
And you're doing that. Now, I know that are very open, because when you came to speak to our Generation Wow girls, a lot of them said, I want to speak to her. And you very generously speak with them. Who has been a mentor for you, and what is the kind of mentor advice you received that's been helpful that you could share?
Wow. Well, definitely mentors for me have been my friend, Judge Cox. I have seen her as a judge in this role for years before I became a judge. Judge Brian Davis, Judge Roberto Arias, who is now retired, but not just in the legal system. Just people out there that were knocking down doors, opening doors in the community, I'll say, have always been influences, as well as my own parents. They were teachers, and some would consider their role small, but they were so encouraging with whatever I wanted to do in my life. And so I say to those that are looking, we're talking about the importance of mentoring. So if you're going to be a mentor, to sacrifice that time. I have several young people that watch my court or the court proceedings via Zoom, that are either in college or law school right now. I also am working with several organizations so that we can make sure that our young people get to see us, not just in a bad setting, maybe, that they can just observe what we do in the courtroom so that they can be inspired. And if they see someone that looks like them, that it may enable them to just dream as to them taking this specific role. But the mentorship is huge and important for each of us that are able to take on these roles and just sacrifice a little bit of our time to open the door in the eyes of somebody else.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier, I just want to say this because I love this from Miss Landry. I had to remind myself just this week, I can get 100 no's. I just need one yes.
Yes.
Thanks for pressing and for sharing. And, there's so many stories, right, of success stories today where people said, we have no idea of what they went through to get where they are. That's why it's so great for you sharing. But you mentioned you're at UF. UF is one of the best law schools in the country. And yet we're seeing now a diminished pathway for minorities, people of color, to get a seat in these hallowed halls. What's exactly happening?
Well, from what I understand, it may somewhat be about the application and many being discouraged about applying, but I also think that it has to do with those applications themselves going through the process. And I'll tell you that I believe that I was certainly a benefactor of coming to University of Florida, specifically because of my race, as well as the qualifications. But do I believe that my race, I got a scholarship, a Virgil Hawkins scholarship, and it was afforded to us as minorities to make sure that we got our opportunity at that table. And I know that those there have been processes that have been changed that will not afford the same opportunity to sit at that table. And I believe that's why obviously you see the classes looking so differently than the 20 plus minorities or Blacks that you had in my class when I came out in 1999. So that's why it's even more important for all of us to work as a community to encourage our minorities to apply and to push other pathways that may be available, because we need them in this legal system, regardless of your role as an attorney or judge or whatever that is.
No, I mean, well, listen, we talk about this with our girls all the time, but even for us as women, right? We want to see ourselves in places. I mean, it's the surest way of seeing a pathway, if you will, a welcome mat to accomplishment and achievement, right? If this person can do it, then I can do this too, right? And if we all look at, if we are that rich tapestry and fabric of the world, the multicultural world we live in, then it is even more encouraging. Yeah. And I think there's, it's funny, you make some headway and then there's some pushback, right? It's like, whoa, okay, like maybe not so much right now. And yet it's really in our collective best interest to make sure that talent is developed, it's supported, it's in a community that's encouraging, and that there's pathways to success.
Absolutely. And those pathways are important for us to make sure that we educate our young people about, make sure that they prepare for them, understand when I speak to high school people that, what you do on social media matters, because it will be looked at, 10 years down the road. Having good credit, because I learned those things on this path, that during that interview process, before I even sat down in the chair, they had looked at my credit for the last few years, and no one really helped me to understand that All of that is a part of the pathway that will determine whether you'll sit at that table. And we have an obligation to educate now, make sure that our young people learn about that entire pathway, that it's not just secretive and beholden to those that are going to inherit this seat because their father was a judge, or they had that insider knowledge. We've got to dismantle that by educating our young people early about how this process truly works.
I do understand that, and we all have to learn how to earn our way, right? We all have to learn how to earn our way. Gary Kleiman says, what would be the first step for anyone who wants a mentor?
I would tell you that, of course, Gen Y is excellent, and that is certainly a process. If there's a specific interest in the legal field, you can reach out to me or reach out to my judicial assistant, and I will be certain to respond that way and see if I can direct everyone. And I'll make sure that I give you, I am bad for my judicial assistant's information, but I think I have it right here. Miss Wright, Akeisha Wright, and you could email her, or you can call at 255-1255. I'll make sure I get that.
Well, that's amazing. Talk about open door support, encouragement. Here we are, phone numbers, emails, anybody who wants to make help. But it's on making they think we definitely have to do a wow girl field trip to your courtroom. We'll figure that out at some point in time. You gave us, we always like to ask people 3 things that they want to leave with our friends who join us for these conversations. And so, Sherry, if you want to put them up, the first one is not, when failure is not an option, right? Perseverance, never give up.
Absolutely. Never give up. I mean, you understand, as the next point says, I had 17 no's that I was so discouraged, embarrassed, but I remembered what my own assignment was. I knew what my purpose was, and I just didn't want it to be on me if I didn't make it. That might have been the answer or the result, but it wasn't going to be, because I chose to not stand there and receive the appointment or sacrifice my own self. And that's one of the important things, is to make sure that you are empowered enough with knowing who you are, understanding your self-worth, and understanding your assignment, and then putting the action connected to your dreams. Dreams are great, and I love them. They level the playing field. They put you in a position, hopefully, to gain these positions. But dreams without the work and the wisdom coming up with a plan on how you're going to obtain and win is just as important as dreaming it.
Wow, I love that though. Know who you are. Know who you are. Understand the assignment and work for it. I'm going to say that. I will say that again before we conclude today. Have you seen? Do you have to run again?
Yes, my term will be up. It's every 6 years. So
Okay.
it would be, I was elected in 2020, so it would be 2026 that I would come up for re-election.
Okay, what's the difference between an appointed seat and one that you have to run for? Is it a different kind of law that you sit? I mean, educate us a little bit.
Yes. The roles are exactly the same. It's just that if you're appointed, the governor actually has filled that seat. And that comes about if someone maybe retires in the middle of that term. And then the governor will have the opportunity to appoint someone to fill those seats. But even appointed judges at the time of their election term will have to either be put before the community again to be elected. But oftentimes here in Duval County, obviously, we don't have any opposition. Judges are known to not have opposition. So that's why you traditionally don't necessarily see many judges on the ballot, even though each one of them has an election term that will end every 6 years. But if they don't have any challenger, then they're just automatically elected.
Right. And that's what we're hoping that's what's going to happen for you in 2026, right?
Well, that is fine if it happens, but if it doesn't, I have to be cognizant of that's how I came on the bench. And I'm hopeful that the community that I serve will see the service that I've rendered and choose, if I do have a challenger, to reelect me based on that service.
Right. Right. Oh, when you speak about compassion and grace, have you sensed, is there a different, I don't know, is there a different sensibility now from when you started? I know you were the board chair of legal aid, you led the Jack's Ethics Commission. Is there a change in the air that you're feeling or sensing about how people are looking at the world or what they're feeling from the world?
Absolutely. And sitting in this seat, often it's just a different view, a reminder. And just real quick, one of the first times that I came into court, and they hit the gavel and announced that you should arise for the judges. I was already sitting there. I forgot. I was sitting there and I was doing some work, and then they brought everybody in and they were telling them to arise, and I stood up because for so long that I've been on the other side of this, and I was remembering, Rhonda, you're the judge. So to pass by this courthouse year after year, day after day, and now understand that I come in and come to the seventh floor and see my dream realized, I don't take that for granted. And that is so, it's with me every day. So when you talk about what the world sees in us right now, what they're getting, how they're feeling, I am very much in tune to that, and I try to listen to that. But I do think that there is a great amount of discouragement, and people are looking for help, and they come to the courthouse expecting, I don't think, to necessarily see that help. But in my courtroom and where we have the opportunity to render justice, and so many other judges, wonderful judges in our circuit, are able to afford those opportunities or directions to people that maybe are just really at the bottom of trying to get the assistance and their belief in our community. And I think that we have the ability to restore a lot of people's hope that they will get fairness and justice from this system.
And how do you do that? How do you do that? That's a big restoration project, right?
It is. It's huge. And sometimes it's not going to even be about the rendering of the judgment, but it's about how we do it. How do we treat people? How do we deliver that this is out of my hands, ma'am, but I am going to treat you with respect so that you will be emboldened to go out and continue to fight, even if I have to deliver a no to you as your answer.
Right. That's all about community, right? Communities of respect, right? Of tolerance, of grace,
Yes.
all of that.
Yes.
And if it comes from around us in the community, we internalize it and then tend to give that back out. But people now, we also have to look at this. I remember there's a judge in the system who once said to me, Donna, there really are some bad people around here, and we have to tend to deal with that as well, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was just in first appearance court where we had not just, one murder or one person killing one other person, which is it's still, horrific, or alleged to have committed that murder. But to see, killing 2 and 3 people at a time, it is so disheartening. It's discouraging. And we as a community certainly we've got to work towards an answer.
Right. But you have like tell us what's the one case you've had so far since you've been sitting on the bench that stays with you? Is that something you can share?
Well, just recently, I had a young man who was living in his car, and he had a driver's license charge. And I'm like, you're living in your car, so your license is suspended. How is this working out? And I mean, he just was very helpful with helping us understand that he had gotten out of prison and was working as a welder in a welding program that brought him to Jacksonville. His mother had cancer, and he didn't have anywhere to live. And just taking the time again to hear his story, connecting him to an attorney that could give him the process that he needs to go through. And there's so many in our community community that just need to understand these processes on how do I get a valid license so you won't continue to go through the system. He cried right there in front of us in the courtroom. And I mean, it pulled on my heart because that helps me to understand that what we're doing is powerful, it's impactful, and I hope that that is a lesson, because in our courtroom it takes us a little longer than maybe others to handle things, but everybody else around us will hopefully understand that what we do in that courthouse isn't just moving on from one case to another. It is truly about impacting and changing these people's lives, our own community's life for the better. So that's just one of the examples. When I saw those tears rolling down his eyes, it wasn't just about a driver's license case.
Right? It's not right. It's about the dignity of life, right? It's about being seen and being heard and trying to figure it out. And life is hard. We need each other. We need you, Judge Rhonda. We need you. We need you. I always like to wrap up with a couple of things that that struck me. And if anyone wants to write them I'm sure they did, because people have been writing the whole time, which I love. But you started with the community that believed in you. And it seems like there've been a community, a positive community around your whole life. And there was a community that helped you get elected on the 17th time. But let's not forget, you got to put the work in. You said you got to work to improve. I didn't get elected. I had to figure out why. I had to keep getting better. And there's so many, especially young kids today, like, I want that job. Okay, you got to work for it. And if you work for it, guess what? Good things will happen. Know who you are. Understand what needs to be done. And then, that beautiful story you just said, you underscored it with this idea of being comfortable with extending grace.
Yes.
Trish Melly, how about this? To help change behavior, are you able to communicate with your judge colleagues about how you hold your court with grace and give?
Well, I could not instruct another judge on how to, handle their cases, their elected officials or appointed, just like I am. But I will tell you that it is contagious. When you treat people fairly, you treat people with patience and sensitivity, the community starts to see that this can happen from the judicial seat. And they start to expect that. They'll talk to other people. They'll get in the community and word will get out. And we are held to our community's understanding of this role. And I think that the voices of the community are now heard because of the many actions that many of us have taken to show that these judicial seats are the people's seats. This isn't something that should belong to, just an entitlement system. It belongs to the people and how we treat people.
I'll tell, and your sweet mate, I have to say, you must have the most powerful, compassionate, brilliant courtrooms in the whole building, because you have Judge Morand and Judge Peoples Waters, both incredible judges who come from a place of grace and brilliance and thoughtfulness. I can't thank you enough. I love the idea that it's contagious to be patient and have respect, and let that grow as the contagion, the viral element that builds our community. Thank you so much, Judge, Your Honor. You are our honor, honestly. Let me just say this to all of you. Thank you for joining. Please be back with us on the 15th of November. Another remarkable woman with a remarkable story, Dr. Donna MUSSALEM'S personal journey. She had stage 4 breast cancer and a heart transplant, a survivor. She's a doc at the Mayo Clinic. She spoke at Gen W last year and wowed everyone. She's a certified lifestyle medicine, breast specialist, and who better to learn from, right? To live a healthier life. Invest 45 minutes on November 15th. It's not a lot to invest to refresh and have a better life. Also want to remind everybody, we've talked a lot about mentoring today. If you'd like to mentor, November 7th is our annual Generation WOW experience. We'll have, I think, 600 teen girls. We're hoping to have 115 women mentors. Judge Peoples Waters was with us telling her story to those girls. You can understand why their testimony is one of really great outcomes from having this experience. Please, genwnow.com If you can, sign up or call our office at 904-372-4859. We've announced Believe, Ariel. Yes, we have. Generation W, April 5th. Put it on your calendars. Not too early to register. The speakers coming this year are remarkable. We'll reveal them soon. But there you are. The 5th of April. I think you have to get your court calendar, your court calendar excused for that day, Judge, so that you can join us. That would be rather amazing. And of course, anybody, we're here, we're community. We know how important community is. Follow us on social media. Have any questions, send questions, want to be involved in any more ways, please do that. Until we see you again, listen, live your best life. Be great, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thank you, Sherry Levin, for doing great production for our whole team. Janine, Ariel, I'm not sure who else. I think maybe Leslie, Kristen, thank you. We'd love seeing you as well. And June 15th, Judge, I'm going to come visit you. Take care.
Please do. Reach out to us if we can help you, anybody.